stories for you. You guys want to hear some stories? Oh my god! Here we go. So, um, the end of our last session, we ended with Vasilis Spanos and me being totally in love with having some unrequited love experiences as a very young 21-year-old belly dancer. So I took you through the story of my very first troupe and my very first teacher and the misunderstanding that happened there. Um, and how that led me to dancing at El Nujum, and then my mom managing me. If you guys saw the card that I posted on Instagram, it had her name was scribbled out. But that was the card, the actual card that I used to give out to people. And I was thinking about that too, actually, and thinking about telling you guys, because a lot of people ask business of belly dance questions. And I might do all of my early marketing stuff when I didn't have money for food. I had to market if I was going to make any money. So I have some very, what they term, scrappy marketing tips. And one of those is be a photography major and buy your neighbor's darkroom and set it up in your bathroom and make your own business cards out of photographs. And yeah, so and have a mom that'll pay for it for you and will drive you to class. A lot of the stuff that allowed me to have early success was all circumstantial and luck, really. So where we left it was I wanted to skip forward to a special story before I went back to the timeline, and that special story was regarding leaving Orange County for a moment and moving to San Francisco and becoming sort of getting initiated into the way that belly dance is done in San Francisco, which is different than the way that belly dance is done in the Bay Area. I mean, in Orange County. And so, getting initiated and learning some different ways of being in the clubs, and then going back to the Aegean Cafe to dance there because I loved it, and bringing some of my new habits with me and what happened with the patrons there. So, when you would go and see Fat Chance Belly Dance perform at Amira Restaurant on 17th and Valencia in the Mission District of San Francisco, which I would drive up from Santa Cruz, where I was living at the time, and would go do. Members would have a basket on their heads, and they would go around, and people could put money in the basket, and then they would give you this awesome little information sheet. And I say little, but it wasn't that little. It was like a half of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. It was cardstock. And I wish I had kept it. I wonder if Carolina has a photo of it somewhere. I copied it, like straight up ripped off the idea almost immediately. So I have copies of that. But on one side it had, I think a class schedule and class information. And on the other side, it had frequently asked questions. And one of those is, what is the noise that you're making, referring to Zaga reading. And the other was, are those tattoos real? And I think there was a brief history of belly dance as we understood it at the time, which I'm not sure that Carolina would feel that way now. I haven't asked her. I don't know if that's been updated in her mind. But yeah, so it was a history in Zaga reading and, are your tattoos real? Because back when Fat Chance was performing in restaurants, people were not real. They were just starting to get heavily tattooed. But people didn't have big tattoos and piercings. It was considered very alternative at the time. So then, here come these dancers, these belly dancers, and they're all covered in like pretty big tattoos for the time. And, audiences were shocked and amazed, and I guess constantly asked them if they were real. So the basket is what really had an impact on me. The basket and the information, the little pamphlet, which I thought was genius. Because if someone cares enough to give you $1, they're interested. And if you have their interest, why not tell them how to take class if they want to? It might not even occur to them otherwise. So I also didn't have a problem with tipping on the body, but it was a paradigm shift immediately. As soon as I saw, I mean, one of the reasons, and we'll swirl back around to this when we get back to the timeline, one of the reasons that I quit belly dancing in clubs in the first place was that for me, it felt, this is totally a personal thing, and I might feel differently about it now. It felt really sexy. And at the time, the sort of public expression of sensuality as empowerment movement hadn't happened yet. And so the idea of either burlesque or belly dance or stripping as a way to assert your right to express yourself in a public space the way you want to, whether it's, in line with the current mainstream norms or not, didn't exist for women being openly sensual or sexual even in public. But it just didn't feel like me. The hands in the hair and any kind of sensual expression, it didn't feel authentic to me. I mean, you guys now know where I came from. You know that I was lying to get cigarettes, that I was listening to Suicidal Tendencies, that when I wasn't punk rock, I was metal. And then I think, and I identified more with the musicians than with the groupies. So even though I kind of was a groupie now and then. But anyway, I've always been a bit of a tomboy. I've always been a little masculine, a bit androgynous. And the idea of like uber femininity for me, I had no issue with it, as I said, but it didn't feel authentic, like an authentic expression for me. And when I saw just a photo of Carolina, that's when I was like, that is what I want to do. This like chest up and, this very regal like feeling. And I felt the same way when I saw the baskets on the head. It was like forehead slapper. Of course, like, why should I offer my body for them to touch just because they've gotten to look at it? It feels like the right thing to do. And so when I went back so the first time that I went to the Aegean Cafe and I was dancing there, I had on the costume that you saw in the title card, which was this turquoise and hot pink. It's pretty cute, actually. Madame Abla, which is made by an Egyptian designer. I had 3 Madame Ablas because Suhaila had them. So I had to find out who her designer was and get the same costumes. And they were all the rage at the time in the early 90s. So I got these, and I got them used. I got these used Ablas, and that's what I was dancing in when I was dancing at the Aegean. So I go to good old San Francisco, and I fall in love with this whole, tribal style, and I start to fall in love with Jill Parker's specific look, which was hair down and these sleeves rather than cholis. It was just a coin bra and these sleeves, and they were like long gloves. And then she lost the skirt, and we just wore the pants. And and often, I don't know why, but we always wear 2 buns or 2 pigtails or whatever. So I was wearing like 2 pigtails at the time. And where are my photos? Hold on a second. I pulled them out. They should be right here. Oh, I put them somewhere very special and important. Well, we'll take a break in a little while. They're up here somewhere. They're up here someplace. Where was I? I was at the ponytails, and so I had this very specific look, and I went down to the Aegean Cafe with my long gloves, and they loved it, and my little pom-poms and stuff, and they thought it was so interesting. And if they hadn't known me, it might have been a little bit different, but I already had a really good relationship with them, so they just let me come in and dance as a guest for fun, for old time's sake. And I used the basket. I brought my own basket, and I had some interesting experiences, and it's, it almost chokes me up. So going from table to table with a basket on my head, and there were all kinds of regulars there, and some people would show up to the Aegean Cafe, like every business has its, one or two sort of odd regulars that the business is like, yeah, that's Joe. He's here, every other day or whatever. There was a guy there with his girlfriend, and he had a stack of ones. And she was super excited. And clearly this is like a thing they did, where they would, we go to the Aegean with our stack of ones. Like, I just kind of picture where he would even go get so many ones. And that was one guy I'll save to the end. But I remember going around and people, getting their money out. And there's an emotional element to that. I don't know what it is exactly, but I've been that patron. When the belly dance comes around, you want them to know that you support them, but you're giving them money to show support. There's a lot going on there that I've never really unpacked, but it feels like a lot. And I remember this blonde guy who was probably in his 50s. He seemed kind of shy and kind of excited, and he was there with either a girlfriend or family or something. A totally well-meaning guy. And he went to go put the dollar in my bra or something, and I said, could you put it in the basket? And he was like mortified. He just, I'm so sorry. He was just like, he felt like this, it looked like he felt like this dirty dude who got it wrong, who was just looking at my boobs. And I was like, it's okay, man. That's what usually people do. Like, it's fine. I just prefer to use the basket. I got no problem with tipping the regular way, but you're totally good. You're all good. And he was like, okay. But I really didn't think that, it didn't occur to me that when I said, nope, if you could put the tips up there, please, that someone would be like, I am disgusting, And I didn't want them to feel that way. I didn't feel that way about them. So then my favorite response was the dude with the stack of ones. Now, what do you think his response was? I wonder what you guys all would, what you would guess. And if we had less of a lag, I would ask you. But dude with the stack of ones, who went somewhere specifically to get those ones, who brought those ones with the intention of putting them in some belly dancer's costume, and his girlfriend was equally as excited. And, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that it was this big, this stack. It was huge. He was planning on putting dollars in my costume for a while. So he goes to put $1 in my costume. Oh God, some of them are coming in. This is very exciting. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I want to address that, but I'll wait. I know, stacks are for throwing. And, eventually stacks. Well, I'll tell you the stack story later. Okay. I'm gonna finish this story without going off the rails. Now, this guy pulls out his stack of ones. He's excited. His sweet girlfriend's excited. And they go to put $1 in my costume, and I say, oh, thank you, if you could put it in the basket. And he was like, but I want to put them in your costume. And he was sort of, these are before the days of constantly seeing people behave like this, like we do on social media now, where it's like, Karens right and left. But he was kind of working up a little bit of a Karen vibe. But I was very spiritually fit at the time, and really, really loved people, and sort of understood that this was going to be hard for him. And so, just like with as much love as I could possibly muster, because he looked to me honestly like a little kid who had his Tonka truck taken away from him. He did not look like a mature choosing adult. You know, he's just like, "What do you mean I can't?" And I was like, "Oh, it's okay. You know, I just prefer to take tips there and not in my costume. And, you know, I don't need tips. It's totally fine." And he was like, "Well, yeah, I can't give you any of these if I'm going to not put it in your costume." And I was like, "That's okay. You know, you could still enjoy the dance, and I don't require tips." And I think that's sweet that you brought that, and I appreciate the thought, but, you know, I prefer to take them in the basket. It's totally fine. And he just didn't even really know what to do with all of that. He was just kind of like, "So you're not mad, so I can't argue with you, but I can't tip you. So what do I do with all this?" And so, you know, I gave them a big smile and was like, you know, "Have a good night." And I meant it. And I think they could feel that I meant it, and that I, you know, wasn't like, I can't believe you would even think that I would, you know. I was like, "It's fine. It's totally fine. I don't need, you know, the $35 or however many you got there." And so we left, and they were still kind of stunned. And, you know, by we, I mean all of us, me. And I went back up onto at the Aegean. There wasn't a stage. There was just like a dance floor where the Greek dances would happen, and where the patrons could dance, you know, when it was like party time or whatever. And so I went back onto the stage and continued my dancing, and they were quiet for a long time. And then something happened. Some change came over him that was really beautiful. like an understanding or a appreciation, or I don't know what it was, but it just felt like maybe I'm projecting, but it felt like some kind of a quiet calm or something came over him. And he came up to me and he did the stacks are for throwing thing. He put the stack in his hand and he went like this. So $1 at a time flew up in the air and then came down around me. And after he did his whole stack, he went back to sitting. I was like, that was fascinating. And yeah, and it turned out great. So that was not necessarily, none of the reactions, I just didn't really think it through, I guess, before I brought the basket and said, you know, I'm going to try doing it the way they do it up north and take tips in the basket. I didn't think about the fact that people would take their assumption as a sign of disrespect and then have to make me wrong to defend themselves. And there's like a whole bunch of stuff that, a whole bunch of emotions that were happening over putting the dollar in the basket. Okay, I'm going to look and see what your questions say. Women worse about groping and being disrespectful. I've been groped by men more than women, generally speaking. Let's see. Newbie belly dancer from India. Hi, welcome. And it reminds me of telling my parents about belly dance. Mom was easily able to appreciate it as art, but Dad couldn't get the sexual out of his head, and it upset him. Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I didn't realize it was sexual until, like, I think I talked about it 1 or 2 ago, and I just looked at my monitor and I realized I have no features. Hold on. I'd like to have my face back. My light's a little bright. There, I have a face. Okay. Yeah, I didn't see it as sexual at all. I just saw it as sensual for a long time. It wasn't until I think a year ago or something that I was like, oh, actually, that's pretty sexy what I'm doing, you know, with, like, if you think about the stuff that we're doing, this is very, I mean, let's be realistic. Like, this is, you do this when you're in a certain position and someone is usually reclining beneath you. Say, you know, hip stuff, hip up stuff, not really. I mean, I just took a bunch of workshops with Mohammed in Costa Rica, and one of the things that I thought was interesting is I always thought this was just, you know, shoulders in order to make these go, but he's like, no, think of it more, the center of the chest moves it and the shoulders follow. I was like, oh, that's interesting, but I digress. So it is sexual and sensual. And when it's meant to be titillating, when it's in a club environment that is meant to inspire sexual feelings for men, I think that's what men see. But when it's in a more neutral sort of family environment, and the sexuality element of it is sort of de-emphasized, and the empowerment posture, sort of huntress from another planet, is emphasized, I think women respond to it more. And I feel like women respond to it like watching Black Widow or something. Clearly Scarlett Johansson is wearing a very tight outfit and has really nice butt. But that's not necessarily titillating to me anyway. But it is exciting, and somehow I feel empowered by Scarlett Johansson's ass. And that's not a quote. Let's not bring that one back. But it's true. So let's see. Oh, you're sweet. Sometimes people just don't know what to do and confuse our show with a certain other show just to keep the dancer by the table. I will literally grab the singles from their hands and throw them up. I wonder how they respond to that. They're like, that was my tip money. That was my dessert money. This wasn't all for you. Can you imagine if they were just going to give you one of those dollars and like 10 of them was supposed to be for their cab home, and you're like, sorry. Well, hopefully it all works out okay. Yeah, sexy can coexist with the art. Yeah, it all depends, right? It depends on every single person's personal experience. There's everyone, as a result of their upbringing and their experiences, have a different response to sex and sexual imagery. And, it's, if you're going to interact with audience members, I think it's really important to be willing to be sensitive to their life experience and their possible responses. And it doesn't mean that they're idiots. It doesn't mean that they're not, but it doesn't mean that they are. Automatically, they might be responding the way they've always thought a woman wearing a bra in public should be responded to. And it's an opportunity to educate and get them on your side and have them be like, oh, I never saw it like that before. I haven't seen that before. And that's my very favorite response. Let's see. Yeah, they look confused, but the rest of the place loves it. I bet that's hilarious, actually, for everybody except that person. But I could see being like, yeah, and if you're just like make a big party out of it and act like, woo, we're just partying here, then they're probably like, oh, okay, hopefully it all ends up fine. Am I seeing everyone's? It looks like I'm missing one or two. Nope, I'm seeing everyone's. So yeah, that was my brief step to the side out of the timeline to tell you guys about what it was like going back to Orange County with a basket. And when I was taking tips in my costume, I didn't have any problem with that. I thought it was hilarious. And I did that the whole time I was working in clubs. The only time it wasn't hilarious is when somebody was gropey. And that was really hard. And that only really happened one time. And I remember where it was. It was in Los Angeles proper. It was in the big city. And it was dark in there. And it was a place I didn't normally work. I don't know why I worked it, if it was a party or something. Oh. I wonder if Juniper needs it. Want a tip? I just tipped you for showing me your belly. She looks actually confused. Yeah, that groping sucked. But most people were doing it. They were following my lead. And it's so corny. But my favorite thing to do used to be so corny. To stretch. To put my hip out so that somebody would put $1 in it and then be like, oh, I can't catch it. And they'd be like, oh, I can't, trying to put the $1 in and I can't. And I was like, I loved it. I really did. So why don't you come back here? You're not going anywhere. Come back here. Come on. Come on. Did you want to come back here? Jim. Jim. Come here. Come on back. Yay. Okay. Let's see what else is going on here. Let's see. Yeah, never thought about it as a thing. I'm guessing a sexual thing. Maybe it's because I don't see myself that way. I'm working damn hard to make these movements. If I didn't keep my face in check, I would feel like a mad woman. I would like a mad woman? You would like? Oh no, now because of the lag, I'll have to wait a minute for the response. Okay, I'm gonna come back to your comment because I want to know what you mean. See yourself in a sensual way, maybe? Let's see. Yeah, and let me say one last thing about the sexy thing, just so that you guys, I just want to be clear, especially for any new people. You know, as I had said, everybody's history with sex is totally different. Everyone's, even if two people are raised with the same parents, they're going to have different sexual experiences, different, responses to those experiences. And I think, oh God, that was a loud fan that was going. And I think the sexy absolutely can coexist with it. And I think for some people that's extraordinarily liberating. And in the Bay Area in the early 2000s, there was a burlesque dancer. I think her name's Indigo Blue. There's a documentary about people taking a 6-week burlesque class and then performing in a student show that was just for the students. And the documentary follows their experiences and asks them why they wanted to take burlesque, how they feel about their body, how they feel about taking their clothes off, all that stuff. And now I was watching this in a theater with a bunch of burlesque dancers. So, of course, I was open to it anyway, but I was even more open to it when in the past I had felt that there were very clear lines between burlesque and belly dance. Like, this is right and this is wrong, and this is what's acceptable and this is what isn't. And then I met a woman that changed all that. Her name is Fuchsia Fox, and I love her so much. And she was performing in the show, which is why I went to watch this movie in the first place, was to support her because we had met at another show and I loved her immediately. So I'm watching this documentary, Something in a Smile, A Kiss and a Smile, A Wink and a Smile, maybe, is the name of the documentary. And it was totally transformational for me to see a whole, like between 6 and 15 people talking about how they were learning this dance form for themselves. And that to take off their clothes in front of people was such a radical act of self-acceptance for them that, it chokes me up too, that it was a way of honoring their bodies. And for me at the time, I'd never come across that point of view. I had never encountered it, I had all my heteronormative ideas about what was right and wrong and what a good girl did and what a bad girl did. And, what I did against those things, I was either clueless or rebelling against on purpose. But this was a whole other dimension that I hadn't... You have an itch? A whole other dimension that I hadn't considered. And really liberating. So that's, for some people, art and sex, are synonymous. For some people, sex is a private thing. Of course, every single person's different. So, I wanted to say that I don't have an opinion about someone else's authentic need to express. And there are things that, the venue owners might feel that they want to put in a restaurant, and some things that they might not feel are appropriate for a restaurant. And if I want to work at that restaurant, then I need to observe those guidelines basically. But if you're doing a show, you would, hopefully only be doing shows that align with whatever you feel powerful about, whatever you feel strongly about. And then, where you want to express yourself is going to align. Unless, God, everything I'm saying, I'm like, well, that depends too, because that would be true unless you're trying to blow the doors off of some old ideas that people won't let go of. Okay, well, that would be true if so. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. I just want you guys I just want to be clear that I am not saying that being sexy or not being sexy is right or wrong for other people. That's all I want to say. So that took a minute, but let's see. Early performance. Oh, that's a great question. What the best lessons you learned from your early performing that you took into the next part of your career? I'm going to save that juicy question, but I'm going to put it in my pipe as I go along and tell you these stories about the early 90s. I'm going to look at what time it is. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So I was hoping to get through the early 90s in this episode, and I just might do that. We'll see. I started telling you guys about the clubs, and I started dancing in the clubs on my 21st birthday. I told you that story last week, which ended up leading to leaving my troupe because I had a total misunderstanding about how I was supposed to behave when I performed in street clothes on my birthday. But what that led to was getting a job at that club, which was called El Nujum. It was in Corona. It was a Persian restaurant, and I became their Friday and Saturday night dancer. And back in those days, you had a stage name. You did not use your American name because most of the people that worked at these restaurants were from the place that the food was from, like, generally speaking, but not always. Egyptians didn't always, there weren't really Egyptian restaurants, so I didn't meet a lot of Egyptians, but there were a lot of, in Orange County, a lot of Lebanese, Moroccan, Greek, Persian, as it was termed at the time, and let me see where else. I don't remember what Hassan's restaurant was. Maybe Pan Eastern. So starting at El Nujum, which was the Persian restaurant, the place was amazing. It had this big stage. It was a really big club, and it was only, I don't know, it was pretty packed on Friday and Saturday night. And I hadn't been dancing that long, and I didn't know anything about dancing at restaurants. I was never briefed. Not that I ever briefed anyone either, but God, I really should. I was never briefed about how one would behave, or how you pack a bag to show up, or how to talk to the band, or what a set looks like from start to finish. So I just sort of learned by keeping my eyes and ears open. And I was 21 when I started, so that was 1991. And I had been in college for a year at that point, Orange Coast College, and I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I certainly didn't think I was going to be a belly dancer. I just didn't think that was ever a possibility. So when El Nujum happened, and this is a little overlap from last week, El Nujum happened and I started making money, and I started making more money than I would make at a coffee shop. So I thought, shit, this is a way to get through college. So then I booked my mom to be my manager, and you saw that little business card that was my mom's name that was scribbled out. It said manager, and it was my old phone number in Huntington Beach. And my mom would call a restaurant and say, I managed this person, which is just like, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We were just play acting. Hi, I managed this dancer, and I'm interested in having her audition for your restaurant. And so I auditioned for every place. And I honestly don't remember at the places that I didn't continue working. I remember Hassan's, I was not super into, basically Hassan wanted you to be there for a long, long time. And the musician was one guy with a keyboard, and it was kind of a small restaurant. And it was dark. And at that time, I had already started at the Aegean, which was like packed. And dancers don't even make this now. You made $80 either a night or a set. I mean, 10 years later in the Bay Area, you made $20 a night to belly dance. But at the Aegean, you actually made $80 and you split the tips with the musicians 3 ways. And sometimes we would get piles. I mean, they would have to sweep the money toward the stage at the end of the night. And, normally I'd have mixed feelings about that. But, I loved doing it because these musicians worked so hard and they were there every night. And, I was in love with one of them in the early days. So I think I just didn't continue on at Hassan's. I didn't continue on at Marrakesh because you had to go room to room. And I really liked and it was recorded music, which I didn't love. I really loved working with a live band. And there were a couple other places down there that I can't really remember. But it was really all about El Nujum and Aegean. So I had El Nujum on Friday and Saturday nights and the Aegean on Tuesday nights. And I re-listened to the last episode and I realized that I actually crossed 2 eras in the Aegean Cafe. So in that one, I said that the owner loved me because I'd stay and hang out and talk to the patrons. Well, I realized that wasn't the first time around. That was Bay Area Fusion Rachel, where the owner was female and sweet and wonderful. The first owner that I met was not into me at all. His name was Tassos. Tassos. I can't say it exactly like you're supposed. There's an S sound in there. Tassos. And he was brutal. And he was under a lot of stress and had a cocaine habit. And it wasn't personal. He just didn't respect me at all. And then to add fuel to the fire, we would change in the office. And one time I locked the key to the office in the office because I was nervous or something. And he started yelling at me and freaking out and going nuts. And he said, "Okay, now you can dress in the kitchen with the cooks. That's where you're gonna dress." And I actually did one time, I think, but I mean, no one saw anything. It was all under a dress or something. But we ended up working it out so that I could dress in the public restroom. And but I remember one night when I hung out late, even though he'd yell at me and kind of treat me like shit, I loved the restaurant so much, and I was just like, "Oh, it's Tassos. He's stressed out." He said to me one night, he's like covered in sweat, and like the bottom half of his face is hanging down to here, and he's like, "Never own a restaurant. Never own a restaurant." And I've never forgotten. I'm like, "Okay, don't worry, dude. I'll never own a restaurant." So I didn't take it terribly personally. Hold on, I gotta gloss up here. I'm dry in the mouth. So that was the Aegean's owner. And then later a woman bought it and she was really sweet. And the other place, Hassan was kind of neutral. Marrakesh was kind of neutral. There was a Lebanese place I worked at for a while. Oh my God, the owners were the sweetest. I don't know why I didn't stay there. I can't remember. But I remember they told me one time, they're like, "You're like a daughter to us. We love you." They were just like, oh, the sweetest people. And El Nujum, I don't remember why I left El Nujum because it was a really good experience. I mean, it was one band on Friday and then it was John Belazikian and Suhail Kaspar on Saturday. And I mean, talk about getting experience fast. The first band was all Persian. It was like I didn't know any of the music, and Saturday night I knew some of the songs. But that's, what it was really like was probably a lot like it is now. I don't think the restaurant scene changes very much in America. I mean, after 9/11, a lot of them closed. And I think the Aegean is closed now, finally. I don't know what happened. It's so sad that it did. Um, and Vasily went on to sell real estate. And I talked to Alex recently during the pandemic, and he sent me his new CD, and I'll give you guys a full report. I need to listen to it. And he's doing the same old stuff. But man, it's hard when you make your living as a rock star performer in restaurants. And I remember thinking, God, why aren't these guys touring everywhere? Why aren't they world famous? And, they're just like making a living, night to night, living off those tips and saving what they can. And it's tough when you get older because you don't work, you don't eat, kind of a thing. So, yeah, that's the tough side of living as an artist. If you can't produce work, what do you can't produce work, you can't work. Unless we're fortunate in this day and age, we have recordings. You can have residual income, like for me to tour online, where your work can continue to live on even if you can't work for some reason. So, yeah, that, clubs in the 90s, no dressing rooms, generally speaking. In the Bay Area, that was a little bit different. Oh, maybe I can loop that one in, but that one isn't it. That chapter, the Bay Area chapter, is going to be mammoth. Because it leads, to me really committing to this and deciding to go to school for dance and deciding to move to the Bay Area for dance to study with Carolina and Suhaila. But before we wrap all of that up, changing in the bathroom. I don't even remember changing in El Nujum at all. I was 21. I don't know. Before we wrap that up, I want to fill in a little bit of a gap that happened before I started working at these clubs. So I have here, did I put them there? Yes. So I've told you guys before about, last week I told you about the falling out I had with my first teacher. There was a thing that happened before the falling out where my friend Paula and I, she was in the class too. We were in my teacher's rec room / basement, and we found the video Suhaila Dances for the Sultan. And at that point, I'd seen the Gypsy Moor dancers, and I thought it was Habiru, but retroactively. Anyway, I saw the dancers at the Renaissance Fair, excuse me. And I saw my teacher, and I think that was it. I just seen Renfair dancers and my teacher. So Paula and I were like, oh, what is this video? And I guess Suhaila Dances for the Sultan had just come out in 1990. I have an ad for it from Arabesque magazine somewhere. And Paula and I pop it in, and we were like, and I remember one of us said, that's not what we're doing. And we're just like, holy shit. So I don't really remember. I think I quit. I think this is when I had come back after quitting for a few years. And when Diane and I, Atesh, as she's known professionally, when we split, I didn't have a teacher because I hadn't found Angelique and Nemeth yet. And I needed a teacher. So I remember calling Aisha Ali in Los Angeles. Oh, that might have been later. Anyway, I was in Costa Mesa, California, in Orange County, and I needed a teacher. And there was a Persian liquor store, and I did not know anything about the writing or anything. I just saw what looked like Middle Eastern writing, and I knew Suhaila's name, and that's all I had to go on. And I went into the place, and I said, do you know who Suhaila Salampour is? And he did, which is actually, I mean, you know that joke of like, oh, you're from New York, you know Tony? That old joke, like, what, just because this guy's Persian that he's going to know who the Salampours are? The fact that he did know that is actually kind of miraculous. And he knew where to order them, and there was no internet. Like, I had no other way of getting that video that I had seen in my teacher's basement rec room. And I still have 3 of them because they're like my prized possessions. So these were the Pars video versions of Suheila's releases. And Pars video was, they're still in existence. I looked them up in preparation for this, and I was hoping that they would have something about themselves, but they just opened a YouTube channel and they just have music on it for now. Oh, she's a little grumpy. I think she's a little stiff in the hips. I know how that feels. But you need to wait, okay? So this feels like a little bit of a miracle to me. Come on, focus. Yeah, this is just amazing that they even had these, and I had 6 of them. I don't know where the other 6 were. I think I let them go because the only ones that I really wanted were the performance ones. Because for me, for whatever reason, I didn't want the dance breakdown. I don't know why. I just wanted to follow. And what I didn't know at the time is that was the way the dance is traditionally taught in a lot of parts of the world, where you just watch the teacher and you just follow them. And every single time I put in Suheila Dances for the Sultan, and I mean, I don't know how many times I watched it. I memorized it just through watching it, not through writing it down or for breaking it into chunks or anything. From start to finish, I can dance it for you. Not as well as she did, but from start to finish, I watched it so many times, and my heart would still race every time I would put the thing into the VCR. And so basically what I did is I just copied Suheila. And what I didn't know that I was actually doing was I was building a dance vocabulary from all of the steps and moves that she did in Dances for the Sultan. So if I wasn't doing her exact routine, which I did, by the way, I found the Princess of Cairo cassette tapes, and I brought, when I did birthday parties, which I did, I started doing parties and weddings and stuff. Because the stereo was always, back in the day, was always shit. It was always bad. So I got this enormous boombox that had a pretty good sound, for, I don't know, 20 feet or something. It was decent. It was pretty loud. So I got this huge boombox, and I would bring my own boombox with the Princess of Cairo tapes, and I would do Suheila's routine basically. And then at some point, I think when I started working at this Moroccan restaurant and I started dancing to Mokhtar Al Said stuff, that's when I started playing with different things, because he had some different rhythms on there that didn't necessarily match with the stuff that Suheila was doing. But I basically just took the steps from Dances for the Sultan and would just kind of apply those. And then I started freestyling at the same time. So that's how I started developing my own personal vocabulary before I didn't have steps for anything. I mean, names for anything. I didn't say this. I didn't think this was this step. And it was just sort of like, now there's this thing. I don't even know how my mind, I just wanted to do it. I just loved it. So there are lots and lots and lots and lots of repetitions of both watching and practicing. And I had a video I mentioned it last week, I had a video of myself doing one of Suheila's from 1991 BC, which is one of these. It came after Dances for the Sultan. I was doing her drum solo or something, and I showed it to Suheila, and she was very nice, and she was like, "Oh, I can see where you thought that's what it was. That's not exactly what it was, but I see what you were going for here." I found out, as I mentioned before, the type of costumes that she wore, and I found where there was a place where I could buy them, which was a company called Turquoise International, which had a catalog, and you could go up to their house, their mansion, basically, this beautiful home, and up in the loft, Ali and Cookie were the owners of Turquoise International, and they would take you up to this loft where you could look at the Madame Obla costumes that they had there. And I mean, I don't know, somehow I've always had money for costumes and jewelry, even if I didn't have rent, because, priorities. So somehow I had three, I think three costumes. One of them was white and green, and one of them was that turquoise, and I think my white and green one was new, and the other one was that turquoise and hot pink one. And the white and green one burnt in a fire. My little house in Laguna Beach burned down in 1993. And I must have had another one. Oh, you know what? I had a black. Oh, this is a fun story. Oh, so the other one, it's just a sad end for that. I just left it somewhere accidentally, I think, and found it in a vintage clothing store later. I was like, this is my costume, and I almost bought it, but I didn't. That's a boring story. But anyway, the interesting costume story was that I was already trying to find my own way through what was available to me. And so I had bought an all black Madame Obla bra and belt set. No embellishment, no designs, nothing on it except just like tons of black beadwork on the bra and the belt. And then I had we made the old school circle skirts. They're just like they were in the 60s and 70s, which basically you take a plate, you measure from where you want the belt to be to the floor, and then you take a plate and you mark on your fabric that length from the edge of the plate all the way around, so you end up with this big circle. And then you add a little inch, of course, for some for hem and some for elastic. And then you just cut this little panel out of that so that it has two slits in it. And you bunch one in the back and one in the front, so you're showing both of your legs. And mine, I made a dark magenta circle skirt with my black bra and belt set. And I was wearing a lot of Indian jewelry. So I was trying to find my way back to that first group that I had seen, while still being a restaurant dancer. So, restaurant dancers weren't dripping in a suit. I didn't know what a suit was. I had no idea where to find the old chunky North African stuff that I fell in love with. So I was trying to make a go of it myself. So yeah, that's the costume story for the early clubs. Let me see what you guys are talking about over here in the chat. Oh my God, that's such a good question. Okay. Yeah. Question from Julia. Did these places not have a featured dancer before you? All of the places where I live have a house dancer, and you basically have to go through her more than the owner to get work. Oh, I'm glad you asked me that, because I do have a story about that. Back in the early days, I had no idea how anything worked, and they may have had a dancer before me on Friday or Saturday, but I had never been there before, and I think we were there on a weeknight. When my teacher had danced there. And then basically, Julia, I don't remember if you were here last week, but I will briefly tell the story about how the first gig happened. It was my 21st birthday. My teacher was dancing on my 21st birthday at this place called Al Nujum, this restaurant. And the Egyptian flautist that we were working with said, "Hey, it's Rachel's birthday, get up there and dance." And I was like, okay. And I didn't think twice about it. And he said, "Play Aziza," because he knew the songs that I knew, but I didn't know the names to any of them. And they start playing it, and I'm like, oh, I love this song. So I danced, my heart out, because I was so happy to be there. And if, you guys may remember that I never thought I was going to be good at this. I had quit because I thought I was particularly shit at it, and came back to it because I said, oh, I just love it. And, I just want to, I don't care if I'm never good at this. I just love it. I just want to do it. And so it was that kind of joyful, like, it's my birthday and there's this band and I'm so happy to be here. And then the musicians hired me and the club hired me. And I was like, and my teacher wasn't very happy about it. And I can understand why. So I knew nothing about how jobs worked or how much. I just had and didn't expect it. I just kind of was, sideswiped by it all. So I took the job. That being said, years later, I don't know if it makes sense to say I should have known better, but I didn't know better. When I was living in Santa Cruz, I was coming out of another 5-year period of not dancing, and I wanted to dance for my dad because he was super supportive of it, and my dad's a drummer, and he made a living as a drummer for the first 20 years of his working life, and he was always encouraging me to perform. He taught me how to play drums when I was 9, so he was very encouraging of the whole performer life. So my dad was coming up, and I say that and I'm like, that sounds so weird to be like dancing for my dad, but it was not. Believe me, it was none of that was in my mind. Nothing weird was going on. So I asked the restaurant where I was working, which was a place called India Joe's, and they had belly dancing regularly. I said, can I, dance here? And they said, sure, yeah, go ahead. So I danced just, for fun for my dad. And then they were like, wow, we should hire you. How much do you want? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And I knew the dancer that worked there. And I figured, I don't know what I thought, but I didn't think it would affect her. I have that problem my whole life. I don't think anything I do is going to affect anyone. And then people are like, that's affecting me. And I'm like, huh? I'm getting better about thinking about it beforehand. But if I ever do anything shitty to you, just assume that I would want to know about it and that I probably am clueless about it if it happens accidentally. Because that seems to be how I get into trouble, is by actually thinking that I don't have value and that no one cares what I do when people care what everyone does. Anyway, so somehow I took a job, and I thought, this is what I remember. I remember them saying that the other dancer got a certain amount of money, and I said, well, I'll just take that. And then I ran into her somewhere, and she asked me how much I was making, and I told her, and she said, well, you're undercutting me. And I was like, what's undercutting? Yeah, I didn't know. And it turns out that, like you're going to hear over and over and over, the club owner had told me less than she was making because they wanted to pay less and I didn't know any better. And then she thought that I was trying to screw her over when I wasn't even thinking I was going to dance professionally ever again. So when I went to the Bay Area and I wanted to work at a restaurant, I went straight to the dancers after that. So, I'd audition for a place, and then if they hired me, I'd go talk to the dance. I mean, if they were interested, I'd go talk to the dancers, which was how I got into Amira. But that's a Bay Area topic. That's for another time. Let me see. All right. Holy crap, $20 in the Bay Area. That's saturation. Yeah, thank goodness. Live in a smaller city with fewer dancers. It was saturation, and it was also tips, I think, because it was tips and students. Because I think a lot of dancers, you don't really make your money performing unless you're performing in big shows a lot. Oh, wow, you guys. Anyway, as a belly dancer, I'm like, oh no, not cleavage. This will make a fascinating video. So, I think that they were sort of performing in some ways to get students. I don't know. I'm not sure how the money got so paltry. I mean, I would spend $15 to get to the restaurant and $15 to get home. So I would lose money every time on a Tuesday night. Now, if you work a Saturday or a Friday, that's different. And that's when I went to the dancers. What I did that worked out really great, I'll just give you a little preview. I worked at a Mirror restaurant on Tuesday nights when a Tuesday dancer left. or I think I worked the crap shift basically on Tuesday night to get my foot in the door. And then I didn't engineer this on purpose, it just happened that way. I contacted the Friday and Saturday night dancers directly by going to the shows because, I was into it, and I went to the Friday and Saturday shows and got to know everybody. And because that's the only place I wanted to be. And then I said, hey, I'm working on Tuesday. If you ever need a sub, I'd love to sub for you. And once they got to know me, it was Nana and Alina. God, she was so stunning. And, and Bryn. Nana, Alina, and Bryn were the Friday, Saturday dancers. And Nana was the star. And it got to where I subbed so much because they'd be like, oh, I don't feel like doing it. They could call me the same day because I was so green and so hungry. They could call me like Saturday afternoon and be like, I'm kind of tired. You want to do my set? I'd be like, yes, I do. And I started basically dancing there regularly until someone wanted to give up a second set. And then they were just like, why don't you take the second set on Saturday? So I got the late set on Saturday night, and then somehow I got an earlier set on Saturday. But I remember how excited I was when I got the Saturday at Amira. That was all I ever wanted. I was so excited about it. Let's see. Some differences. Let me see. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about, how are we doing? 6 minutes? Okay. The best lessons I learned from my early performing that I took into the next part of your career. I think improv. And to fall in love with Middle Eastern music, because back in the day, you didn't dance to Western music ever. Like it was never an option. Like you're dancing at a Middle Eastern nightclub and you're either dancing to live music, which seems like it was mostly the case. I mean, at the Aegean, El Nujum, the Moroccan place, I could bring recorded music. But, there was also, by the way, there wasn't any Middle Eastern fusion. And the first time that I know of that the electronic music thing made its way into belly dance was when Fat Chance started performing live with Chebby Sabah. And if you're new to all of this, then please check out Chebby Sabah's stuff because it's really beautiful. He would go to India and he would record the musicians and then he would remix it. And he also played at this little dive bar in the Haight, like every Tuesday or something. As a DJ, he would play his stuff and other people's stuff. So there was this whole thing happening as the internet was born in the late 90s, early 2000s, where electronic music got to a place where it could start putting world music into it. And, tabla was the first thing. Oh my God, tabla was everywhere. There was, so many people that, I worked with the Toronto Tabla Ensemble for a while, and they had this album, and one of the songs on it was Sample This, because they're just like, oh God, people just want some tabla to sample. But before the late 90s, and this is 91 to 93 we're talking about that I was dancing, you had to practice improvising. There was one way to do it, and that way was to be ready for anything. And so I would just put on music and dance and just, try to enjoy what I was doing. And it wasn't until after October of 93 that I was even able to watch myself dance. I had no idea what I looked like because I didn't have a camcorder. I mean, back in 1993, 91 to 93, where did my VHS tapes go? The way that you would film yourself for review was by putting a freaking tape in the recording device that you had connected to your TV, which took you like forever to get hooked up. And then you could play it back by, rewinding and fast forwarding and stuff. And that only happened, oh God, this is another awesome part of the story. I was only able to do that because of a very fortunate accident. But I'll circle back around to that. So So yeah, that's what I learned from my early performing that I took into the next part of my career. That also that usually that Middle Eastern audiences, especially first generation, like born somewhere else and have come here, um, they really, at least in my experience, when they go to the nightclubs, they look really nice, and it's important to look your best. And I'm like, this California hippie, whatever, and I'd be wearing ripped jeans and whatever I felt like wearing to the club. And so what I learned pretty quickly is like when you go to your job, you either go in character with a cover up and a nice little bag, or you wear something that you would wear to a cocktail party or that you would wear to a nice night out, that you look really nice. Otherwise, they're just gonna, the audiences that I experienced anyway, immediately disrespected me if I walked in there looking like disheveled. They didn't want to know my real life. So yeah, treating the job with respect, improvisation, being ready for everything, and also spending a lot of time dancing to Middle Eastern music, because there is a quality that is distinctly non-Western that I cannot put into words. I was talking about it earlier today with my coach. I need to write about this because there is an accent or a flavor or something that is present in the original dances. And maybe I need to ask some dancers of origin what they think it is. And some people have told me, like I was in a nightclub once, I was there to see Jelena, and the guy sitting next to me starts talking to me and telling me how Americans can't do this dance. And they can't do it because they don't feel it. They don't feel the music. There's this feeling there. There's this, there's like a quality of being in love, or of being swept away, or where you just disappear. And there are words for it in different languages, but I don't know if that's exactly what it is. It feels like an accent or a flavor or something. And I feel like spending all of that time with musicians from those countries and asking a bunch of questions and talking with them about their experience and learning to play the drum and learning the music and learning the rhythms and dancing in those environments, that it helped me to connect with whatever that flavor is that makes it feel very, I don't know, I can't describe it. When I figure it out, I'll tell you. But there is a thing an ephemeral, ethereal thing that I'm grateful that I was forced to kind of step into, because I loved the dance so much. I didn't love the music at first, but I did after a short while. It was just so foreign to my ear. It was so different that it took a long time to get used to it. So yeah, I'm really grateful that I was kind of forced to learn to dance that way first. Let me see. Some of the differences I've noticed about how I feel dancing in clubs and restaurants and how I feel dancing in shows. Do you have a preference? Ooh, that's a good question. I like them for different reasons. I like different things about them. So I don't love one-offs. I don't love a ton of prep for a show, for one show, because it's never the show I want it to. Not the show, but my performance is never the performance I want it to be. Because it usually takes me a lot of repetition. I am a procrastinator, and I can try so hard not to procrastinate. And I have tried my whole life to improve it, and I make incremental improvements, but then I backslide, and like my audio today. So there's always, something in that first performance that didn't lock and load, and I used to joke when I was with Belly Dance Superstars that the first 10 performances were like warm-ups. it really took me a week and a half of nightly performances. And on my 11th show, I'd be like, all right, dialed in. And then I would have, 3 to 6 weeks of a completed piece that I felt good about performing. When I'm touring, I like a big stage. I like the remoteness of it. I like the emptiness of a big stage, especially if it's the same venue night after night, because then I know the space. There's no travel. I can get there early and stretch and get super warmed up. And I just like to be in this peak place if I have that whole big stage, because I feel absolutely naked up there. And if there's one thing that doesn't feel like in the pocket, I feel like it's this huge glaring thing. I feel so exposed and vulnerable, and but not so much vulnerable in a good way. Vulnerable in an, oh fuck, I think I forgot to put my pants on kind of a way. So when I tour, I love performing in big theaters. But the thing that I love about performing in the right kind of restaurants, basically right kind meaning there's a place to change and you don't have to change in the bathroom, excuse me. I just poured water all over myself. All right. You can see why my stage persona has it all together. Okay. What I love about performing in clubs and restaurants is the people, is getting to see people, getting to talk to people. When I worked in the Bay Area, I would actually go around afterwards and just be like, how is everything? And how is your night? And, if they were like, I would of course leave. But that's how I ended up teaching at Pixar, was that I ended up really hitting it off with this table. And they were like, why don't you sit with us? I was like, all right. And I got a glass of wine because I was still drinking then. And I sat with them for like 2 hours or something. We talked about everything. And it wasn't until the end of the 2 hours that one of them was like, we have classes at Pixar. You should come teach. And I wasn't teaching at all at that point. And I was like, okay. And it was amazing, an amazing experience. So I taught at Pixar for, I don't know, a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And danced at the, I went to the Bugs Life premiere, and myself and Pixar students, danced at the Nemo premiere. And what do you guys think they served at the Finding Nemo premiere? What do you think? I know I'm not going to get to see it, but I'll just wait one more second. Maybe you guys will write it in now. They served sushi at the Finding Nemo premiere. Which is hilarious. They were sick of looking at fish. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, I love meeting people. I love talking with people. I loved, especially after Belly Dance Superstars, I went to Amira and danced and talked to people afterwards. And someone was like, you seem to be different than a regular belly dancer. And I said, oh, there's different styles. And she's like, there's different styles? And after, basically needing to explain what it was that I did as a fusion dancer in interview after interview, it was so nice to be like, bless you, you don't even know there's different styles. That's amazing. So yeah, I love meeting the people and talking to the people. How did you find music? Oh, at that time, that might be something that's different about club dancing now. Yeah, it was all tapes. So you would just order tapes from, well, actually, no, there were CDs too. There was wait a minute. I just put 2 and 2 together for the first time. Arc 21. I used to buy stuff from the Arc 21 label, like Mokhtar Al Said was on Arc 21, and that was Miles's label, and that was Belly Dance Superstars. Okay, that's not that big deal for you probably, but it is for me to be like, oh my god, I bought from Miles for years before. So yeah, I would basically just find the world music places. And then when I started doing fusion years later, I would go to bookstores and, remember when there was like Virgin Megastore and these huge CD places. Wow, it's like a lifetime ago. And would go in the world music section and would basically get all the real world stuff. And I had a few favorite labels that were putting stuff out. Rough Guide label. And some of those CDs are still out there. I know bellydance.com is selling some music, but it sort of stopped. And Chebby Sabah, it was also in San Francisco. There was a lot of stuff that was just beginning to happen. And so I knew about Chebby Sabah and could, go into the record store and buy his stuff. So in the early days, I don't actually remember where I got those cassettes, where I found Princess of Cairo. It might have been a mail order catalog. I don't know. But yeah, that was a good question. So early days, I don't remember. Oh, my teacher in the very, very, very early days would make us tapes. And there were records, but I don't think I had a record player. Turquoise International's still around, actually. At least the last time I looked, they still were selling stuff. And I think Ali is, well, God, this is probably 15 years ago now, was doing tours back and forth. Is it true that I actually don't want to live in Oregon or don't like it? I've never felt 100% at home here. But I was thinking about it in the last week. I was like, I don't know how I feel about living in Portland. I don't know if I connect with Portland. I don't know. And then I was like, I don't spend any time actually in Portland. Like I moved here. I started practicing. I think when I first moved here, I was going to shows and was involved in the community and went to people's stuff, and then like very, very quickly my partner Sol and I started Datura online. Oh, I can't wait to tell you guys how I started Datura. That's a hilarious story. But all of it just sort of, Datura online was intentional, but opening the studio wasn't really intentional. It was meant to be a place to practice and just to have some classes to kind of experiment on the locals if they were into it. But I think I don't really feel at home here because I don't participate. And that really occurred to me last week when I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? You're allowed to say that you don't feel at home here when you're involved. When you're involved and you're doing stuff and you're hanging out with people and you're going out and you're actually in the community, then you can decide. But just sitting in my house being like, I don't know why I don't feel a part of things here. Maybe that's because you don't leave your house. So yeah, it's not so much that I don't like it. I don't feel like I live here. And in the Bay Area, it was, I was doing so much stuff. My apartment was basically where I'd go to throw stuff on my way from point A to point B. I was just busy from the first day I was there. So let's see. If it makes you feel any better, saw Nine Inch Nails perform in circa 2012, second venue of the tour. Trent Reznor stopped the show to start the song over, and he is always over-prepared. It happens. Yeah, it does. I mean, for me, it happens pretty much every time. But when you have ADHD, you better accept that. And it's not that I don't try to change it. I do. I absolutely am not resigned to like, well, I might as well not try. Who cares? It's not about that. In fact, when I don't try, sometimes things run a little more smoothly because I'm not obsessing over details that don't matter. Like I used to get so obsessed when I would dance at the clubs, like must complete this necklace now, and then would forget something important because I needed the necklace to feel okay. I don't know what that's about, but let me see. Oh, yep. Oh my God. Can you believe just now the Pixar comments are coming in? It was fish. Okay. Well, that was a while. That was a while between the Pixar. God, you guys are going to be here so late. You're going to be hearing the sound of my voice much later than I'm hearing it now. Sorry to keep you for 2 hours. But, half an hour of that was getting set up. So what I will do is it'll be wrapped. It will be wrapping it up. I will be wrapping it up. So next week, we're all done with, the clubs. We are going to start with why I moved from Orange County, from the time that I quit, why I moved from Orange County to Santa Cruz, and I was not belly dancing at the time, and why that happened, and I moved to Santa Cruz, and why I gave you guys a little bit of a preview with the India Joe's thing, why I started belly dancing again, and then once I moved to Santa Cruz, that was the ramp up, man, and it goes really fast, because I can't believe it went this fast. I just reviewed all of my journals and was like, are you kidding me? Basically, I moved to Santa Cruz in like 1998 or something. I go to school 99, 2000. And before school is even over, I've joined and left Ultra Gypsy and studied a little bit with Suhaila, studied with Carolina Noricchio, worked in all these clubs, and then Belly Dance Superstars happen. So it's like Santa Cruz happens, I start dancing again, but this part is so my favorite part. It's really fun to tell you all the crazy things that fell in line that just sort of like catapulted my life in a totally different direction. So I'm going to need to put the photographs in post because I didn't go collect them and I didn't scan all of those. So you'll see them on Instagram. I'll do a little edit of this with some of those photos like I did with episode 2. And I'll leave this open for a minute. Forcing you guys to be here. You must. All right, guys. Well, then, I think when I close this up, you can still add comments for a while. So why don't we do that? I will close this out, and I will see you next week with Santa Cruz and basically the catapult.